Welcome all to the Lofi Podcast. Today, my guest is Mike, otherwise known as Larkwood Falls. Welcome.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
No worries at all, man. It's great to have you on. I mean, we've worked on a track together. I absolutely love it. And this is an opportunity for me as well to get to know you better as a producer and as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've watched / listened to your podcast pretty faithfully, which is my favorite. Honestly, so far, my favorite thing about it is I've collaborated with all these guys. and to actually hear their, the one thing about lo-fi, I like making music in the same room with people, and we don't get to do that as much in the lo-fi world. And so getting to see all these guys and hear their voices, and some of them sound just exactly like I thought they would sound. And then some of them, it's like, wow, that's not what I expected. So they're probably having the same reaction to me right now.
Yeah. An example of that is with Colors and Clouds. I didn't know that he was from the UK until I started reaching out to him for the podcast. I was expecting to hear an American accent, and then, well, there you go.
Gary's one of those longtime lo-fi friends I have, and he's a good dude. And so that he was not one that I was surprised about.
Right.
Yeah, he was kind of as advertised, which is cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so here, Mike, as we get started into this episode, before we go into music and so on, could you tell us a little bit about yourself outside of lo-fi, who you are, what you do, and just any other hobbies outside of music?
So I live in Alabama in the States, which if you're not from it's kind of southeast U.S. It's summer here right now, and it's hot and it's humid, and it's much more pleasant sitting in here than outside. So this is a good place to be on a summer afternoon here. But I live in Alabama. I've always lived in Alabama. I am a father. I have a wife who is a teacher, and I have 6 kids. 4 of them are out of the house at this point. So as you can tell, I'm aged. I'm like a fine wine, I guess. But 4 of them have left the house. I still have 2 here. And I'm actually a physician by day. I do internal medicine and I do pediatrics. So I tell everybody I'm a pediatrician for everybody. So I get to see these kids and see them grow up. And and I live in kind of a small town in Alabama, which I kind of like because, we're involved in the community. I'm involved in different things, and I kind of enjoy seeing people out. And so I have a daughter, much like Grayware, I think, talked about, because we have that connection. I have a daughter right now involved in musical theater. We're doing Hadestown at the high school, if anybody knows Hadestown, and I'm going to get to help with the music for that. So that's kind of my current, I'm excited about that. But I stay busy. I've got 2 kids that are going to be in college. I have 2 kids that are out of college. We stay pretty busy, but, it's a good thing.
I mean, that sounds like you had a lot on your hands. So, because you say you have 4 that are out of the house and 2 that are there, so you had 6 children altogether?
Yeah, we had and that was never the plan. Everybody always looks at me like bruh, what's the deal? But it's not like we set out to have 3 or 4. We had 3 girls. So my oldest 3 are girls, and I love being a girl dad. I think being a girl dad is the coolest ever. Everybody has girls. But then my wife kind of said, hey, I'd like to have a boy. We did have a boy next, and we had planned to stop and then had a surprise. So I had a girl, and then we adopted a little boy, our youngest. He's from Ethiopia, and that is by far the best thing we've ever done. So, yeah. Yeah, it sounds crazy. But I really can't imagine life any other way. So, but the youngest is 13 now, so it's really not bad.
Okay, that's good. That's good. But like I can guess that, it was a really sort of noisy house at times with all of them running around when they were younger.
Yeah, I mean, I think each phase of life has different challenges, I think several of our lo-fi friends have had babies lately that I know of. I know Cucamello just had a baby, and I think Luke Daly had a baby recently, not too long ago. And that phase of life has its own challenges because they just demand your constant attention. It is constant. You've got to entertain, you've got to change diapers, you've got to feed, there's always something to do. I think as you get later in life, it does get easier, but it's a different kind of hard. And you think as they get older that it won't, you think as kids get older, it'll get a lot easier, but they just have different issues. And even parenting adult children is not without its own perils, I have found. So yeah, I have a daughter that's a teacher and a daughter that's a nurse. So, so yeah, I've kind of been through it all.
Well, that's something for me to look forward to in the future, all being well. But
Yeah, it's I love having a big family, and it's great. We just all got back from the coast and had a great time. So yeah.
wow, that sounds amazing. And so now getting a little bit into music and so on, could you tell us a little bit about how your musical journey started? Like where was this at a younger age, at a bit of an older age? And then how did this develop into production over time?
So growing up, I was really into sports. I was a basketball player and a baseball player, and I ended up playing baseball at, as you guys would say, at university in college here, and was kind of into that. But during my early elementary school years, it's kind of a strange story, but I don't know if you've ever seen these church groups that play handbells. They all stand up and ring these bells. You ever seen those? All right. Well, they had a kids handbell ringing kind of thing at our church, and I was like, man, I want to do that. Which I don't know why I wanted to do it, but I couldn't read music, and so the guy said, well, he's got to learn to read music. And this was like third grade, and so my mom got me in piano lessons, not with the goal of being able to play the piano, but she just wanted me to learn to read music, and so I took piano lessons for probably 3 or 4 years, really just so I could play the handbells, and I don't ask me, but that's how it happened. So I took piano, and then by the time I got to middle school, like 7th grade here, I got really bored with classical piano lessons, probably as many people who listen to this podcast will attest to. I wish if I could go back and learn my scales and my arpeggios and all that better, I really wish I could do that and be more diligent about that. Yeah, I can't go back now. But so I got tired of that. But then in middle school, I had a good friend, and I'll never forget it. I will never forget this. He got a synthesizer. And I think this was probably 1983, 1984. And so I think it was a Korg Poly 600. That's the best I can remember, which is it's not even one of the best Korg synths, but it's a good synth. And I remember he brought his synth to my house, and we were playing around with it. And I thought, man, I got to get back into playing, because I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. I was like, I have got to get into this. So I started taking lessons again. And then I had the fortune of having a teacher who realized I started writing my own songs. I had a teacher who realized, hey, this guy, he likes to improvise and to do his own thing. I mean, I would take the classical music I was supposed to be learning and make it into something totally different. And she would get frustrated. But then finally she realized, hey, we need to turn this. And so she found me a guy who taught jazz improvisation, which was great for me. I got into that. The bad thing was I stopped reading music. I wish I could read better now. And so that's kind of where it went. I then went to college or university and went to medical school after that. So during that time, I didn't get to play much, but I always had this hidden, I would go play just to ease my stress during test blocks in medical school. But when I got out and we moved to this town, I started playing in local bands because it's something I'd always wanted to do. I mean, I loved doing that for years. And after we had kids, playing in bands was not really, I mean, if I had kept playing in bands, having 6 kids, my wife there would have been issues. You know, I would not have been able to read the room. So at that point, I decided, you know, I probably need to stop this. And I always had this itch. I played in church, you know, much like Colors and Clouds. We've talked about that. And I did that for years. But I kind of was always looking for something to do. I always loved jazz. And I kind of stumbled upon lo-fi just accidentally, maybe 3 years ago. Found it on Apple Music, of all things, which I don't even use Apple Music very much. And I stumbled upon these groups that I don't even know who they are. And they're not even, it's strange, they're not even on Spotify. But I remember when I released my first record, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what lo-fi was. I had no idea Discord servers existed. I didn't know anything about lo-fi labels. I didn't know anything about collaborations. I was just like, you know, this sounds cool. I can do this. And I did it. So I'm glad I did. So that's kind of where it's gone.
Right. That's really interesting. I mean, I can say that there's so many people that I talk to that started learning an instrument, and it's often the piano. And they always say that they regret not going further with the classical side of things and doing that. And I mean, like, in terms of that, what do you think that you really missed out on the most by not going further with the classical side of music?
I mean, I think as you get older and you get wiser, you always look back on things in life that you wish you had done differently. But somehow, I believe God works all that out and gives us grace to kind of get through that, and it all works out and it's okay. But piano is kind of one of those things for me. Like, I wish I could read better. For a long time, I wanted to be a studio musician. That's what I had a plan to practice medicine for 30 years and then at age 60, retire and be a studio musician. That didn't work out because studio musicians, even in Nashville, those guys are all amazing. So that kind of went by the wayside. But, you know, I'm not very comfortable. You know, I have friends' kids call me to play at their weddings, or I'll get called to play at this funeral service or something like this. And I'm not comfortable reading music. If somebody puts a piece of music in front of me and I have 2 weeks to kind of practice it and get comfortable with it, I can do it, but I kind of end up improvising around it and I don't play it. I would like to be able to play from music better so I would be comfortable in those situations, but I've stopped playing at people's weddings because it's so stressful, and the mother of the bride is always like, you know, you can just tell they want it just so, and I'm like, I'm not that guy. I'm going to make it my own, you know? And if you do that with Pachelbel's canon, it doesn't work out very well. So maybe that's my biggest regret.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it, because I went on through learning classical piano up until about the age of 17 or 18. And I realized that as time goes on, I use reading from sheet music less and less. Even, for example, last week, my cousin got married and I played music at her wedding. She asked me to play the piano for her. And in the end up, I played everything by ear.
Right. That's what I do. That's exactly what I do. Yeah.
She gave me a list of songs and a list of hymns, and I sort of figured them out at home over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. And it was all my own style. I threw in the odd chords that wouldn't really normally be associated with those tunes. And it's it's funny how even going through with learning the sheet music that it's become more improv.
Yeah, it's just hard to do those type things because they generally don't care, like for the prelude music when people are walking in. They're generally telling me, you just play whatever you want to play. So, I mean, I've played Sweet Home Alabama before during those times, so they don't care about that. But then when they get into it and they want, water music by Handel or something, I'm like, it's hard to improvise that, And, I watched an interview with Billy Joel recently, and he's the same way. He loves classical music now, but he plays it all by ear. Classical music. He was playing a Rachmaninoff piece by ear, and I was like, what? Anyway, so
wow.
Yeah, so that's what I'm stuck with. It's
that is some talent though. To play classical from ear that's a whole other level of musicianship.
Yeah, no, I can maybe play Moonlight Sonata. That'd be about it. Yeah. Don't get the wrong idea.
Yes, and so whenever you got into production, you were mentioning that you didn't really know what lo-fi was. You heard it on Apple Music, and then even whenever you released your first album, you weren't fully aware of the genre, if I'm correct. Yeah, so then how did this awareness grow, and then how did you find more people in the genre and build these connections?
Well, I think that's a good question. So for one thing, I'm old. I don't know how many people were on Will Hatton's server, but you can probably find this way back. There was a survey done. They did a survey of everybody's age, which I made the mistake of answering the survey. And somebody in there, I think his name is Corey, I don't know who, figured out that he could see everybody's answer and who they were. And so me and a guy named Grayware were kind of the oldest dudes on there, and I think I've got him beat by a year or so. So there's a lot of things because I'm a child of the 70s and 80s. Like, I was used to albums, and so when I first released lo-fi music, I didn't even understand the Spotify trend and the digital music trend of this single thing and releasing music every, ever so how many weeks people release them. I didn't know any of that. And so I released this first record, and it did okay as far as streams, but I didn't really know how to promote it. I ended up finally stumbling upon Submit Hub, and I did have a couple songs that I promoted a little bit, and I was like, okay, this works. But then I started researching, and I was like, I've got to do some collaborations. That's got to be the ticket. And so all I did, not knowing what I was doing, was look at my similar artists on Spotify. And the first person I stumbled upon was Grayware. And so I just sent him a message on Instagram. I said, hey, you want to do a collaboration? And we did, and that was the first one. And he was the one who kind of told me, hey, you need to get on these Discord servers. So it was through seeking collaborations that I learned that there were these Discord servers, and there were all these compilations you could submit to. And it was kind of, so I learned kind of from trying to get involved with other people in lo-fi that there were many other ways, avenues that I hadn't even known about, So that's kind of the long and short story of it.
Yeah, I kind of miss the way that albums used to be released, in that you would listen from the first track to the end, and it was almost a journey that you went through, that the artist was trying to sort of give to you in this sort of musical journey. And I think there's maybe a little bit of a resurgence with that in popular music of late. I don't know if you listen to much modern artists or so on.
Oh, I do.
You do? Okay.
When you have young girls, I mean, they went to the Eras tour twice to see Taylor Swift. So, oh yeah.
Right. Okay. So,
I'm not a Swiftie. I'm not a Swift hater. I'm a I can respect Taylor Swift's talent. How about that? So yeah, I do listen to some modern music.
That's
Yes.
okay. So you're well acquainted with it then, or whether you like to or not.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
But I find that there's been a lot more in terms of album releases. At least I've noticed in that I would listen to a bit of electronic music, and there's like albums where people have started to release similar to what they were maybe 15, 20 years ago was the last time this was the case, but where every track flowed into the other in terms. And I'm loving that. I'm loving being able to sit down and listen to someone sort of. I'm trying to think if there's even parallels to poetry, right? Where it's going from one line to the next and it's flowing from the beginning to the end.
I feel like I had kind of made a commitment when I started this journey that I was going to do albums and keep doing them when I realized, oh shoot, I need to be doing singles.
Yeah.
I've backed off on that. I did an EP this year, and the EP was about my kids. And so it was a 5-song EP, and I enjoy that. But I do agree with you, we're losing the art form. And I think people like Taylor Swift have brought it back. I mean, because she doesn't hardly release singles. It's always albums. Yeah, always. So, but I do think we're losing an art form. I mean, I've gotten to where I got all my old vinyls out recently, and I've started collecting old vinyl, and I will play them at dinner to make my kids listen to them. And they're like, why in the world are we listening to, this Carole King record? And I'm like, because this whole thing is amazing. And these songs that were never on the radio are amazing. And they recorded all this to tape in 1970 something. And it's incredible what they did. And you got to appreciate it,
Yeah, I know. Because I'm thinking like even 10 years ago, whenever I started to first like sort of branch out and find music that I liked, back then I'd be downloading singles, and they were all singles. I would stick them on. I actually didn't have an MP3 player, so I had a Nintendo 3DS, and I would download them, and I would put the MP3 files and listen using that, and that was my childhood. And the concept of listening to an album all the way through wasn't there.
Yeah,
like, I didn't have it.
Kids are losing, like, we're losing that art form, and just the reason that I'm so fascinated with studio work and gear is I love getting these vinyls now. And I loved it when I was a kid. And I'll pull that sleeve out, and I'll go through every song and who played on this, who played this. And it's fascinating to see. And you realize some of these people are crazy talented, and they played on everything during that time. So we've lost that.
Yeah, we have. And it's great to see it's having a small resurgence. Yeah. And so I'm looking at the questions we have here in the podcast, and one thing we were talking about in our Discord messages leading up to this was collecting gear and being a bit of a gearhead. And so I think we were talking about sort of learning when to buy gear and when to have sort of that sense of contentment and so on. Do you have sort of words of wisdom that you could share with the community in regard to that?
I don't know that I have wisdom. Don't do what I do. I mean, so just so everybody's aware, before I got into lo-fi, I mean, I've had a studio in my house since 2005 or so. So for 21 years, I had a room in my house that was, I mean, you can see the acoustic panels behind me. This room is not, I haven't done it like I want to do it because my wife doesn't want me to do that. But I used to have a room. I mean, I had a cloud above the head. I had a neutral listening environment, and it was treated, and it was great. And I would record full bands. And so I went through a period with that. I mean, I have gear here that I will never use again. A universal audio preamp and some compressors and a headphone amp and a hardware reverb unit. I will never use it again. And I bought that at a time where I wanted to have a working studio eventually. It I will say this. I think you have to realize that it's not the gear that makes the music. Having the right gear can make you sound better, but 99% of sounding better and producing good music is making good music and not the gear. You can make good music with bad gear. You can also make bad music with good gear. And unfortunately, I went through a long period of time where I made a lot of bad music with good gear. And I've kind of had to learn over time, better to make good music with bad gear.
Well, I think you really did share a word of wisdom there.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And it's a battle. And then when you get in the digital domain, when I was playing in bands, I went through this period where I would get a new keyboard periodically. I'd have to have I'd had my motif on the bottom and I had my Nord Electro on top or whatever. And then I would trade it out and I'd get this and I'd get that, I'd get this, I'd get that. Then I realized I went to software. I went to VSTs. I went completely to a computer. And when you get in the computer realm, then you get in the whole, okay, when do I have enough VSTs? When do I have enough plugins? Yeah, I mean, you can go on forever with that stuff. And again, it's not the plugins, it's who's playing them and it's who's turning the knobs on them. So that's it. If you think you're going to make your career with one certain plugin or make or break yourself, you're just not. It's not gonna, not gonna happen.
Yeah, it makes me think of an artist I quite like named Jacob Collier. And so he has 2 or maybe 3 songs now, which he's recorded using his phone. And those are some of my favorite songs of his, where he just gets his phone, he hits record on the voice memo app, and he just plays acoustic guitar and sings.
Through his phone microphone.
Through his phone microphone. Not even into a DAW, just into his voice memo.
Because I've seen these little Audigo microphones. I don't know if you've seen those advertised. Those things sound great. And I've often thought that's really cool. But straight into an iPhone, that's pretty... And it sounds good.
It sounds really good. Because, like you say, it's the music that makes it and not the gear.
Yep, 100%.
And so he takes this recording, he takes a file, and he just mixes and masters it. And that's it. Nothing else done. So
that's what I'll have to check him out. I'm not familiar with him. Is it just like singer-songwriter music?
So
Both?
he's a bit of an everything musician. He does jazz, he does folk, he does singer-songwriter, but I can definitely share some links after.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll have to check him out.
Yeah. And so, like, whenever it comes to different bits of gear, and so if we were to talk to a producer who's looking to buy some gear, what would you say is the best thing to get and when to be content with what they have, like in terms of what microphone, what DAW, etc.? Like, how would you guide this new musician?
Well, I mean, I think if you're going to do lo-fi, I think you can do lo-fi inexpensively. 100%. You gotta have a decent computer, and it depends on what you play. If you're a guitar player and you're mainly going to be playing guitar, not keys, you got to have a nice guitar. Most of those guys have nice guitars already. I'm still learning to play the guitar. My son just bought a new guitar, and I'm excited because he's out of town the next week, and I'm going to play it. But I think you have to have a relatively functional computer. But the specs of computers these days, he's in engineering school, and both of the computers he has, you could use for music production fine. So if you have a decent computer, you're good to go on that. Then you have to have a DAW. And I mean, I've used Cubase. I use Logic now. I think you use Logic. It seems like the lo-fi community kind of gravitates toward Ableton, which is cool. I think any of those are good DAWs, and you can do that. I mean, Logic's what is that? $199 in the App Store. It's not expensive. And then you need a good interface. You can get. I had a kid in my office that I was seeing last week, and he wants to do some audio production. And I think I told him to get one of these single channel Focusrite Scarletts that are like one channel. They're like, it was like $110 on it on one. And I have heard the thing, and the converters in it are fine. It sounds completely fine. So you're talking computer interface, and then, if you play keys like me, you need a controller. I think software instruments are the way to go now. I think hardware synthesizers sound good, but they're a little cost prohibitive, and I can't afford to go buy an OB8X for $4,000. I'm not going to do that. I mean, they're good. VSTs are good enough. So get a good controller. Microphones. I mean, I'll be honest with you, this microphone I'm using right here today, it's an old microphone. I actually have ordered a new one because this is so old. This is a CAD Equitech, and it's terrible, but I think I sound okay. You don't need to get a Neumann U47. You need one good, with one good large diaphragm condenser, you can record any kind of percussion you want to use handheld. You can record an acoustic guitar. I'm sure you agree, since you play guitar. You don't need a microphone over your right shoulder and one at the 12th fret to record an acoustic guitar. I've done that before. I've read all the posts online about it. You can do all that, and it does sound cool to do it. I've done it, but I could record a whole record with this microphone that the capsules come off the top on. So you don't have to have. So I'd say one large diaphragm condenser, a decent controller, a good interface, and a computer, and you're probably good. I don't know what you think. That's probably all you need.
Yeah, no, I entirely agree. Because whenever I started production, I kept on thinking I needed more plugins, I needed more gear. And whenever I come to think of it, in my day-to-day use, I use my computer, I have an interface, I have one MIDI controller, and one microphone. And everything else I'll use maybe once a month. But even then, I could live without them. And so you realize with time, like the microphone I'm using right now is the one that I use for nearly all my recordings. And yes.
And it sounds great.
Yeah. Like I could upgrade if I wanted to, but it's not a necessity in any way.
Yeah. It especially for lo-fi, you don't even need studio monitors, I would say. Now, if you get to audio purists, which I am to some extent, I mean, I do have studio monitors. I do have panels in here. I try to have a neutral listening environment. I don't right now, but I do listen on my headphones, and I listen on speakers because I'm old. But you don't have to. It's not something you have to do. And I think we all know that once you start mixing and mastering your own stuff, that's not really about plugins either. It's about finding what works and what gets you a good sound, and then go with it. Because 90% of the time when I master, especially one of my own songs, even a collaboration, my mastering chain, it's the same thing, and I'm making very similar EQ cuts and very similar. I'm doing the same. I think we all do that. You get to where you kind of know what you're going to do,
That's it. It makes me think of my dad used to tell me whenever I was a child, when I was always wanting a new toy, he would say that, you're going to want one in another month's time, even if you get this. So sometimes the best thing to be is content. And with what you have, just keep on working with that.
I do agree with that. I blanked on what I was going to say. You're going to have to edit this. I totally just blanked. But yeah, I agree with that. This is what I was going to say. The other benefit I have is because at my day job, I kind of pay a lot of attention to the finances and the business at work. I kind of let my wife, which is different than a lot of guys. A lot of guys don't want their wives messing with the money at all. But my wife is very reliable and she watches our home finances. So the other thing I've done is if I'm going to buy a piece of gear, she knows about it before I buy it. So I can't go buy a $3,000 keyboard and her not know about it. And so there is some accountability there for me, which is useful.
So, Mike, one thing that you mentioned was your love for film scoring, right? And you were saying that you sort of try to incorporate it to make it a part of your lo-fi tracks. How do you sort of go around doing this?
Well, so I think in the lo-fi community, it's easy to get caught up in, and I think we've all done this, comparing. And I mean, I'm an honest guy. I think we all look, oh my gosh, this guy's got 60,000 monthly listeners, or oh my gosh, Hajime, he's got over 100,000. Holy cow, how did he do that? And I only have, and when I first started, I mean, you first start, you think, I remember getting to 1,000 monthly listeners and being like, holy cow, I didn't think I'd ever get there. So for those of you who are just starting, it'll happen. You just have to stick to it. But, and I think when you do that, when you just look at, when you're achievement oriented, like I am, and like a lot of us are, you can get caught up in that. I try to not get caught up in that too much, and to remember that what I'm doing in creating my music is I'm really leaving a legacy. Like, my kids are going to play this for their grandkids one day. And my grandkids are going to play this for their kids. And it's going to be, the digital footprint of this music is going to be there for a long time. So I want to make sure I make music that I like. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that when we start looking at numbers, and we want to make music that's lo-fi girl friendly because everybody has that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just a call a spade guy. I had one collaborator one time, and he told me, he said, I really want to make something that lo-fi girl would like. And I was thinking to myself, and that's just not me. I think. And so the film scoring, I have always been a guy, if I could have any job in the world I wanted to do, I would sit here at this desk and score TV shows and film. I don't know about video games. I grew up in the Atari age, so 8-bit music isn't my thing. But yeah. But so bottom line is I love film scoring. I love scoring for TV. John Williams is like one of my heroes. Probably a lot of people. He's amazing. He's just amazing. And there's other, people who write for film that I really like. I like Hans Zimmer. He's amazing. I like James Horner, who's no longer there. I could go on and on about this, and so when I got into doing lo-fi, I was already writing like music with orchestration and things like this, and learning and trying to hone my skills in that area. And I'm still not good at it. I still feel like, every time I write something and I'm using orchestration and, different software, different, sample libraries with violins or whatever, I still get done. I'm kind of like, gosh, that's not very good. But I've gotten better, and so I kind of realized this is something I could incorporate into my lo-fi. And so I've done a series of releases where I call them the chamber. I think I call them the chamber series or something like that. And I use some chamber string samples on them. So yes, does lo-fi music normally have, string libraries in the background? No. In fact, the song we did, there's violins, violas, cellos in the background. You can hear them if you listen closely. But I've just found that I'm not the guy. I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to leave my own footprint in my own way. And so I'm always looking for what can I do that's different, because I want to be my own. I think it's important that we're all our own person. We find our own sound, and we find our own way of kind of leaving that legacy for our kids, because I want my kids to know, hey, my dad he liked orchestral music. He liked this, and he wrote the stuff with this. And so that's kind of my motivation and where I come from. So I think when you get too caught up in your numbers and where you are, you're not going to make a living. Well, a few people will, but the likelihood any of us hit it big in the lo-fi scene is I feel like I've hit it big in the lo-fi scene because I have so many great friends around the world. If I go anywhere in the world now, I'm going to give somebody a call. I'm going to say, hey man, I'm in town. You want to go get a coffee? So that is the reward for doing lo-fi, is that I feel like I have great friends all over the world. Are you going to make a ton of money doing lo-fi? The bad news is probably not. Probably not.
Yeah, I love what you say there, though, about being genuine in the art that you make. Because, as you say, there's so many people that are trying to make music for a label. They're trying to make music to get hits, to get numbers. And, I think we do have to admit there is a certain part of it where we do love the numbers. We love the dopamine hit we get whenever we see so many streams, but it's a good motivator, but I don't think we should let it become the be all and end all of the music that we produce.
Correct. And I'm not, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I like seeing my numbers go up, and I still do songs that I know, label X or label Y will like, and I still send songs to label X or label Y or Z that I know they're going to say no to. I just know, you know how that is. You send it and from the outset, this isn't going to be their cup of tea. But it doesn't mean that I should stop making that music they're going to say no to. It's okay to make music that the labels may not like, that you like, and self-release it. And I've found that Submit Hub curators, there's generally some people out there who are more than happy to help you promote songs that may not necessarily fit with the labels. It's not that hard.
Yeah, there's always going to be someone out there who has a similar taste in music, or they might not have even heard the style of music that you produced before, and because they're intrigued by it, they want to help you, and they'll add it to a playlist, and they'll support you in some way or another. Yeah, and so it's not always about getting to the big label. It's not all about getting to the big playlist, because you can even start small, genuine friendships from doing that.
Absolutely. And some of the best songs I've done, I know we're getting into another question here, but some of my favorite songs, which I think we all listen to our own music too. Nobody wants to admit that either, but we all do it. So if I go on Spotify and I'm going to listen to my music, which if you have kids, you know the face they make when you do that. And my kids, some of them are like, they're like, Dad, I studied to this. I don't want to listen to it while we're driving to the beach, But there are songs that I migrate to of my own, and many of those songs were released independently by me. And they're the ones I migrate to, and labels didn't want them, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Zero.
Yeah, I entirely agree. And so I think while we're talking about production and making music, that leads really well into our next question, where we were talking about melody and counter melodies and sort of other important elements in producing and trying to incorporate that in our own music. And in fact, like the whole idea of counter melodies, it's very prevalent in like orchestral music sort of soundtracks. You'll have a main theme to a series or a film, and there'll be counter melodies throughout. So this ties in perfect with what you produce.
I mean, I think I think you have to be careful. I mean, I do. I mean, we're just going to confess everything here. So I do listen to like the Spotify editorial playlists a good bit. When I'm exercising, I'll listen to the new Lo-Fi playlist a good bit just to hear, what are they accepting? What are they taking? And a lot of that music is not melodic. And some of that I think is genre specific because, we talk about these songs being beats and, I guess we're all beat makers in some way, and they are technically beats because the roots of lo-fi were in hip hop music, and I get that. But if I'm going to if I truly think of myself as a musician, beat maker is going to be down the list of how I would describe myself. I mean, if I would probably mostly describe myself as a pianist, songwriter, keyboard player, then a producer, then a beat maker, if that makes sense. So I think when I make music, yes, I want the beat to be good, and I use everything everybody else uses to do that. But at the same time, I think you want to write something that brings your audience in. And so, like before I ever wrote instrumental music, I wrote songs with lyrics. And you talk about a hook, the country music writers in Nashville, they always have their hook, I know my theme song right now is I'm Not As Good As I Once Was, which is an old Toby Keith song, which I think is hilarious and very true. But you got to have a hook. And I still try to kind of have that in a lot of my compositions. I've realized that a lot of lo-fi doesn't have melody, and melody's not as key of a component. And I think that's okay. But I think if you do have melody, I think it tends to draw your audience in and it gets in their head. It's like that one thing, that gets in their head and they're like, I got to hear that again. Let me turn Spotify back on. You know what I mean? And so I think really in the end, when I'm writing a song, I'm trying to come up with that one melodic line that's going to bring people back wanting to hear that song again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. It's like getting that earworm, that thing that sort of...
Yeah. And I think even these guys, even these guys who their music's not as melodic, for say, as mine. And I'll say this too. I think it's important to be picky about your melody. Like I have a song I'm working on currently. It was almost done. And I realized the melody sounded like something from 1975. And I was like, no. And so I just erased the whole melodic line and I'm starting over working on making the melody sound a little more modern and fit with more modern lo-fi. And so sometimes you have to be self-critical when doing that, and that's okay,
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think because like at the moment, as we're recording this interview, I've decided to give myself a project in working on sort of a lo-fi country album. Like, so like up until now, like I've been working with folk hop. But like folk and country are quite different. Like they're very different. And so I was thinking, yes, I'm still using acoustic instruments, but let's sort of try to delve a little more on the country side of things. And like I realize that whenever I'm trying to take these melodies that would normally be used by a singer, a vocalist, and incorporate them using another instrument, it's quite hard though. Like the way that somebody would sing something and the way someone would play a lead on an instrument is completely different. And so trying to come up with something like that it's been making me stumped quite a bit.
Country, just for reference, I live about 2 hours from Nashville. And the town I live in, you would really enjoy because I mean, country is king here. So, and especially, so you're talking about an old style country record. Like, is this like Willie Nelson, George Strait, this kind of country, or more modern country?
So it's a bit of a blend. So I don't know if so I like to have that old overused bass line and strumming patterns with the guitars that you'd have heard in the 60s. But also, I don't know if you've noticed in a lot of modern country, they're trying to sneak in sort of hip hop drums.
Oh yeah,
right. I don't know if you're a fan of that or not.
You know what they call that in Alabama?
What?
You talking about like, modern country? They call it bro country.
Bro country.
Bro country. Yep, that's what my friend. I don't really listen to a ton of country, but new country they call it bro country.
Okay.
Don't because there's a lot of people around Nashville where I'm from. Your friend Chase Beats would probably be the same. When they think of country, they think of George Jones, Charlie Pride, George Strait, those guys. And so these modern guys, like, I can't even name them all.
Morgan
So
Wallen.
Morgan Wallen would be bro country. They would say Rascal Flatts would be the seed that planted bro country.
Yeah.
And they would say, don't listen to that. But anyway, I don't agree with that. I think all music has value.
Yeah, I think all music, it has a time and a place, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but trying to shift this back into the melody and counter melody thing.
Sorry about that. It had to be said. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I understand. You're in that part of the world.
Bro country, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
But like what I've noticed is that in like vocal melodies, there's a lot of repeated notes. Like immediately coming to mind is like it's not country at all, but Guns N' Roses' "Sweet Child of Mine." Like the melody is a lot of repeated notes. Ba da ba ba da ba da ba. Like it's already 3 repeated notes at the beginning. Whereas whenever I would play a lead on an instrument, I would try to make it as broad and use as many octaves as possible just to keep it interesting. And so, yeah, I think that whenever you're trying to change between vocals for doing a melody and instruments for a melody, there's quite different philosophies.
I agree. One thing I found is, I think I saw on another episode where you had talked to somebody about jazz and how you had tried to venture into jazz and and had some misadventures, or I don't know what you call it. Yeah,
a bit of a failure.
Yeah, so I've done that, and not because I think. So yes, I think the type of melody you're playing and the type of instrument you're playing affects it, because like I love to collaborate with, if I'm going to try to do some jazz, which I love to do jazz, if I'm going to do that, I love to collaborate with, I have a couple of sax players I've collaborated with. Them playing a melody on a saxophone that's a jazz related melody sounds much better than me, even if I play like, in jazz, oftentimes you'll play double octaves or something. Sometimes the piano can sound completely cheesy playing that melody, but you pull a sax in and it comes to life. It's a totally different vibe. So I think the instrument can play a role in what instrument you use. Like if I have a guitar player collaborate with me, them playing a melodic line rather than the piano, it will often just bring the thing to life. But yes, playing a repeated note it's a challenge. And in country, you have a lot of that.
It is, yeah. So here I am with an acoustic guitar, trying to play what would be a vocal melody I hear in my head, and it just doesn't sound right.
Yeah. You need like a dobro player or
Oh, I would love that.
I have a daughter, so I actually have. So this is funny. I have a dobro sample library on my computer that actually sounds really good. So So you can find those. The one I have is pretty amazing. It'll do it pretty amazing. But I have a daughter that plays the violin, and she did do one. She's played on one song that I did, and it was amazing to do a song with her. But yeah, if you found a fiddle and a dobro, that might get you. That might get you where you need to be. You need a fiddle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't play either of those instruments, but like,
But Northern Ireland, you should have Northern Ireland, because bluegrass, country, and Irish folk music is not. I mean, they're very similar. Yeah.
yeah. Like actually, there's a friend of my dad's. He's from Northern Ireland, but he married a lady from Minnesota, and so
Minnesota. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so they have I think like 6 children as well, and nearly all of them are musical, and so they have their own like little family bluegrass band, and like the wife, she plays the fiddle, the husband, he plays the guitar. Like it's amazing, but I could not play in any way like they do.
Yep. And the amazing thing about that is there's nothing complicated about the structure of those songs. Nothing. When you hear them play, you're watching the guitar strumming, and it's like G C G C G C D, and you're like, but it's this crazy strumming pattern. You're like, and they're going fast, and then they're playing these solos that are just like, you're like, holy cow, how do you? Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. It is.
It's Anyway, we digress.
We've gone completely off track again.
We have chased a rabbit, my friends.
Yeah, we have. And so the final question we have now is talking about balancing work time with family and time in the studio and all of that. And so having experience with that yourself, do you have any tips on how we can help sort of manage our time in this way and figure out what's best and what time for each appropriate thing that we do?
Yeah, I think that I in particular, this is my escape. I mean, this room here, this is, I've got a great little space here. I've got the door shut. My wife is way out there dealing with all the kids and whatever. And I'm in here, and even talking to you is, it's just, I'm away from everything back here, and it's my piece of heaven on earth, if there's such a thing. But I think for me, having a family and having a wife, I have to realize that even though this is my escape and this is, I love doing this. I love getting a new plug-in and delving into it and turning all the knobs and seeing I love all that. It's just so much, and writing the song, all that stuff's fun to me. But I have to realize that, number one, my wife still needs me. She needs to know she's important. My kids still, my son's got some basketball tonight, so I'm going to turn it all off and go watch him play basketball. I think you have to certainly set aside time to do music. So I'll usually look at my week and I'll know, okay, I'm off Thursday. I'll have a little time to work Thursday morning. But I'll also know, hey, my wife is going out of town this weekend. I need to not turn the computer on Thursday night and watch our show on Netflix or take her to dinner, or, you have to make sure that the people in your life are prioritized. If you don't have a wife and kids and you're still single, you still have friends. I mean, you still have friends. And, I had lunch with a friend today. You have to make sure that you prioritize the people. There have been times where, our 30th wedding anniversary is coming up next year, and I'm terrible. I am horrible about planning getaways for me and my wife. It is my weakness. I'm not good about it. She ends up planning most things, and she gets so annoyed at me. And so she said, I don't get it. You plan all your music releases out, You plan all the stuff you're going to buy out. You plan, you plan all that stuff out, but you can't plan us a vacation. And I was like, she said that to me, and I was like, oh, I need to write a song about that. But at any rate, I think you have to prioritize the people in your life that are important. And even though this and this room and this stuff and all this is great, these people are important, and they're of value. And I mean, even in the lo-fi world, I mean, what really matters to me more than anything, like I said, are these relationships that I have. And I don't have the time. When I first got involved, that's the other thing. I was on the Discords all the time, and, I was in the chat rooms and talking to people, and I kind of had to scale back a little bit on that, because I realized, rather than talking to my wife, I'm on my phone responding to Discord messages. And so I think it's just about prioritizing things, So if you're wondering where I've been on the Discord servers, it's just priorities. That's it. Not that you guys aren't important.
But still, it's beautiful to hear that you have those priorities set out, because there's so many people that don't realize it. They don't realize that the people that are closest to them in their lives can sometimes drift away so easily if they don't spend that time together and make an effort to maintain that relationship. And I'm just getting slightly emotional thinking about this too, because I'm just thinking about like my future and what things would be like in that sense. Like I'm not at that stage. I don't have a wife, don't have children, but I'm sure trying to balance all of that can be just as stressful as well in some way.
I wouldn't say it's stressful. And I'm at a good phase of life because, my son's leaving for university or college in the next month. I'm in a good phase because 4 of my 6 kids aren't here. They're gone. So, my interaction with them 90% of the time is via a phone call or a FaceTime chat. But, even my daughters, I went through a time where I was so busy with music, they would call me, and I'll get off work at 5 o'clock or so, 5:30, come home, eat dinner. And some nights I'm in here from 6:30 to 9:30 or 10, trying to finish up a couple projects. And, my daughters would tell my wife, Dad seems like he does seem like he doesn't really want to talk to us. So I had to make sure that when they called, okay, I got to step away. I got to get out of here. I got to go in the living room. I got to go out on the back porch, and I got to let them know, hey, you're important. You're of value. You are more valuable than this. I think this is important and this is great, but it's you got to realize there are people in your life that are more important. I mean, and if anybody, I'll say this, if there are, well, that's probably on you can, I'll let you edit that. But yeah, I think it's easy to enjoy, for this to become somewhat of a, an obsession, to get totally enamored. And I think many of us are just so achievement oriented and so goal oriented when it comes to this. And if you let that get a hold of you, you can lose sight of a lot of things.
I think that's a great reminder, though, to keep priorities in the right order. To remember that, in the grand scheme of things, as amazing as music production is, as amazing as the lo-fi community is, and all of that, we still need to make sure that our list of priorities is right, and that, our hobbies aren't overstepping our family responsibility.
100%. I mean, life is short. I mean, I know we're way over time, but I'll leave you with this story. There, and I'm not going to say any names, but I've been in the lo-fi community for long enough that I truly feel like I have some good friends. You probably feel the same way. Good friends out there who I've never met face to face, and some of them I've never heard their voice. But you know, a couple of weeks ago, I got an email from a Discord message from one of my friends, and he just said, "Hey, I know that you are this kind of guy. I know you're a guy who has faith, and I just want to let you know my wife has gotten this terrible diagnosis, and please pray for us." And to me, that is so much. Like, to me, I'm like, okay, forget all the music, forget everything else. I was on the golf course watching my son play, and I was just like, I said, "Hey, I just found out a friend of mine's wife has this," and he was like, "Oh, that's terrible." But you realize kind of that is what's kind of important, and the fact that we have friends all over the world that would reach out to us and say, "Hey, will you pray for me?" And, I'm going through a hard time. That's a whole lot more important than any of this stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, once again, not to names drop, just to keep it private, but that same person reached out to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it brought me to tears that this community is so close in that sense, and even outside of just the music that we produce, that we're able to reach out to each other. We're able to know that, we all are human beings. We all have life. We all have family. We all have friends, and we have people that mean so much to us.
Yes.
And
yes.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
This lo-fi community is bringing people together in that way, and it's really beautiful to see. Yeah. And so, on that note, Mike, I just want to say thank you so much for this episode. Thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom. It's ended on a bit of a solemn note, but it's...
Yeah, I didn't mean for that to happen. It's been great, Hajime. I really appreciate it. Yeah, your podcast is great. I will say this. I will close on a humorous note. Yeah, everybody always tells you have a voice for podcasting, right? That it's right? You hear that all the time. So my wife asked me about this, and she's going to watch it. And she's an English teacher. And so she's going to love, your accent and yes. So, but she, I told her, she said, "So what does he sound like when he talks?" And the people in America will understand this, but I don't think it's a voice for podcasting. I think you have a voice for NPR. I don't know if you know what NPR is.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay. So NPR is National Public Radio.
Oh,
okay. And there's always been there's Saturday Night Live's. I don't know if you know what there's Saturday Night Live skits with public there's a famous Christmas one with Alec Baldwin in it, but they kind of talk real. "Thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you being here." So I told her, I said, Hajime really has a voice for NPR. And so the people in America will understand this, and I will probably get messages saying, "You're right. He could go work at NPR. He could go work for NPR right now. You could be on their news. They'd give you a job in a heartbeat."
Yeah, well, you never know. That could be an opportunity in the future.
There you go. All right, man. Well, I really appreciate it. It's been enjoyable.
No worries at all. And thank you so much. And hopefully we'll hear from you again soon.
Thanks, Hajime.
Here, all the best.
All right, take care.